All right. Welcome to the Don't Be Ridiculous, Questionable Calls podcast. It is Saturday afternoon, a little bit almost getting close to 4 o'clock Eastern time. Clark Conference Championship weekend. So we're getting down to the end here. We're gonna know who's in the Super Bowl Sunday night. So looking forward to that. A lot of stuff going on. We got coaching changes in the NFL. We got got to preview the conference championship games. We're getting some coaches are getting jobs, some coaches are not. And so looking forward. I think both these games have a chance to be pretty good. So if it's anything like last weekend, we should be in
we should have some
pretty good shape.
hopefully. Yeah, I think I would be surprised if either one of these games turns into a blowout.
Yeah, me too. I think that they're both fairly evenly matched, and I don't, I don't think either game's going to get to the point where one team's winning by 20 or something. I don't think that's gonna happen. So I'm really, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. So the first thing that I wanted to bring up today was, it looks like there's only two jobs in the NFL that are still open. We've got the Washington Commanders and the Seattle Seahawks, and it doesn't look from reports. It doesn't look like Bill Belichick is going to get either one of them. So Bill Belichick gets basically fired from the Patriots. I mean, basically that was the Patriots saying, "All right, we're moving on." They did it. They tried to do it in a graceful way, but this is what it is. So I think there's two to me major factors here why Belichick is not getting a head coaching job. Number one, I think his performance the last 3 years is making everybody a little sheepish about reaching out to him, because I think there's a thing with NFL teams where they want to hire the new young hot guy who can be there for a long time. Like that's what their goal is with coaches. So I think there's some limits to that. But I think the performance of the Patriots the last 3 years is definitely detrimental to Bill Belichick getting a job at this point. The other factor that I think is going on here is that just a self-preservation thing, where other teams, if you work in the front office of another team, you don't want to bring Bill Belichick in. Like, you're going to advise your owner not to hire him because you don't want somebody coming in that basically could replace you.
Yep.
And you also don't want someone coming in and that you have to listen to who's going to tell you what the team's doing, and you're going to lose all your power. And that's normal, I think, in any business. That's the way that kind of works. Somebody comes in with their own way to do things, and that's gonna drive everybody nuts. And I mean, those I think also owners, if they were all really smart, right, none of these teams wouldn't all be losers. So a lot of these owners, I think they want to hire the coach that they want, and they want to be a part of it, which is why the Belichick going to the Cowboys thing was absolutely ridiculous. So, and then actually there's a third thing that I was just kind of thinking about a little bit earlier, that so Belichick wants to bring in his own guys as his assistant coaches, right? He only wants to work with guys that he's worked with before. Well, who works in an NFL front office that's actually worked with Belichick? Nobody, right?
Yeah.
Because Belichick's coaching tree is terrible, right? These guys don't, even if the guys who get jobs, they don't keep them very long. See Josh McDaniels.
Right.
And so he's got, I don't think Belichick has a lot of friends out there. I think if there was a front office person working for a team that understood Belichick, that had worked with him, I think there's be a chance. But I don't think there's anybody like that, because Belichick doesn't really expand his horizons to anybody that hasn't worked with him before. So it's not a surprise to me. I would just go based on performance. Like, that's all I care about. But we all know that's not how the world works. This is all not 100% purely performance based. So I'm not surprised he doesn't have a job. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, yeah, well, like you, I'm really not surprised. I mean, one of the things that's funny to me is, you know, this is a classic example of one of the easiest takes in the world to have in sports talk radio, right? You just say this out loud, right? Belichick, greatest coach of all time, and he's looking for a job as a head coach in the NFL. Well, if you want to just be, you know, sports talk radio, uh, gas bag, then you can just go, oh, well, you got to hire him. Why wouldn't you hire him? This doesn't make any sense. And if you don't hire him, you're obviously making the wrong decision and you're going to regret this and this is terrible. And it's one of those takes that's just, I mean, that's what sports talk radio was made for. And so, yes, there were plenty of people out there saying, I can't believe you're doing this. He's the greatest coach of all time. You're supposed to hire him. And this doesn't make any sense. And blah, blah. Like you said, talking about the performance, I mean, Belichick, I mean, people need to understand this. And this is just something that, two things can be true at the same time. He can be the greatest coach of all time. He can also be, uh, it can also be true that the game has sort of passed him by, and he, you know, he he's as someone in charge of personnel, he's obviously terrible, and he's been terrible not just the last 5 years. He's been terrible for a while, even dating back to the last several years with Brady. I mean, Brady was constantly complaining on the sidelines because he didn't have any receivers. He's yelling at him to get open because, I mean, he gave him Gronk and then Julian Edelman, who was a quarterback in college. Uh, so yeah, the performance has been really bad. The team just seems to be getting worse. They hired Matt Patricia to be the offensive coordinator, even though he's a defensive coach. Which to me, if anybody else did that, that's a fireable offense. And think about the level of hubris that shows. That I'm just going to hire this guy because he can do it. It'll be fine. So, and just it seems like his inability to deal with like talented players, and the way the NFL is now, you need talent on your team. I mean, you've always needed talent on your team, but now it's like, especially on offense, you can't compete unless you have talent on your team. It becomes very, very difficult, and he hasn't really shown a willingness to adapt. I mean, how insular is that? That he's got his kids in New England. He had his kids on the staff, and then it's basically, I only want to work with people I want to work with, and that's the end of it. And to be honest, he's like 72. I mean, that's what happens as you get older. You just kind of get, you know what, I'm set in my ways. This is how I do things, and that's the end of it. And yeah, it's just, I think that the point you're making about he doesn't have any friends in like front offices around the league. It seems like, just from listening to a lot of different opinions about this over the course of this week, the way front offices are now, it's a collaborative thing where the coach has some say, but then you've got a general manager, you've got other people, you got analytics people in there, and we're all working together toward the same thing. Well, the Patriots have not been like that for a long time, and it's basically just been, Belichick's just going to run everything, and that clearly has been an absolute disaster. So I don't understand why teams would really want to do that when it doesn't seem the league's not moving in the direction of Belichick. The league's moving in the direction of, the Chiefs, or some of these, or the Rams, or the 49ers, or I'm trying to think of some other examples of this, or like the Lions. They've obviously got a good thing going there between the head coach and the front office, picking out players and building a good team. And I just don't understand why, as a team, you would want to go backward. And also, Raheem Morris, I mean, I think Colin Cowherd pointed this out. Who are the people speaking up for Belichick? A bunch of people spoke up for Raheem Morris. I mean, I guess Sean McVay was talking about it. And also, Raheem Morris he had worked in Atlanta before, so he already knew people there. So that just seems like that's kind of how things go. Like, it's, well, we know this guy from before, and he fits in well, and he interviewed really well, and he's got these other people speaking up for him. Who else are we going to hire? And plus, how long is Belichick going to be a coach anymore? He's 72. What, are you going to hire him for 3 or 4 years? He completely remakes your organization and puts it in a horrible position moving forward. That's what you want to do, just to get, I don't know, just to say you hired the greatest coach of all time, or just so he can get the record, the coaching wins record, while he's the coach of your team. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and it's kind of funny, all the things that we've been complaining about Bill Belichick and everybody else has for the last few years have all kind of come home now. It's all kind of like, oh, it's all crystallized. And now, because of this is not me blaming the media. This is just the way it works. Belichick leaves Boston, and now all of the writers dump all their stories that they weren't going to release when Belichick was there. So now we're getting information that we didn't have before, where apparently the Tom Brady decision was Belichick. Robert Kraft was really ticked off that Belichick was like, "No, we got to get rid of Brady. Like he's done, he's finished." And then Brady goes to another team and wins the Super Bowl. So to me, if any, like I agree with you about the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator thing. That to me, the Brady situation right there, you should be fired on the spot for that. Like when we have a quarterback who's capable of winning a Super Bowl, right? And you're like, no, we're not going to pay him this tremendous discount that he was giving you, where Brady was, you could have gotten Brady for half of what they're paying Mahomes. It's just, to me, that's just, I don't know how you get past that. And the fact that he's made it, 3 or 4 years after that is amazing to me. How did he make it to this point? Like, I'm not trying to be, and that's the thing. Like you said, two things can be true. Yes, he's the greatest coach of all time. That's not disputable. It doesn't mean he doesn't know how to coach. It just means right now he's not a good candidate.
Yeah. I mean, and, just think about it this way. Who do you want to hire? The old curmudgeon who's 72, who it's kind of like, well, I've got a few years left and I'll be the coach here, or do you want to hire, Raheem Morris? This is his second opportunity. He was in Tampa Bay and it didn't really work out. But now and I heard from some different people. I mean, he coached, obviously he's more of a defensive coach, but he did coach on the offensive side a little bit, I think in Atlanta when Shanahan was there. So, he's got some insight on both sides of the ball. This is his second opportunity. So, he wants to go in there and knock it out of the park because, I mean, the NFL, like you really get two opportunities to be a head coach and that's kind of it. And so with him, it's kind of like Colin Cowherd was saying this yesterday. It's kind of with Raheem Morris, it's looking forward. With Belichick, it's like, well, you want to hire him for the next few years and see if maybe things will work out. And then after that, you're going to be right back here trying to get another coach. And it's, it's just so funny to me. It's like people thinking that the teams are going to regret this. The only way teams would regret this is if Belichick goes somewhere else and like wins the Super Bowl. Okay. I just don't really see that happening. And then it's one thing to just say, well, if they end up firing Raheem Morris in a few years, and that means it was the wrong decision. Well, no, not necessarily. Are you saying it was wrong to hire him and not Bill Belichick, or wrong to hire him and not somebody else? Like there's so many different things that go into that. And then I guess the only other thing I wanted to point out was trying to remember the other thing I was thinking of. In terms of the fireable offense, like the Brady thing, or just the Matt Patricia thing, hiring him as the offensive coordinator. Remember, I think it was last year, like in the middle of the year, the Titans played the Eagles, I think. And, the Titans had traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles. And then, the Titans played the Eagles and A.J. Brown came in there and kicked their ass. And then the GM got fired. It's like, well, you made a really bad decision. That's what ends up happening. So, yeah, that's just kind of some another example of, when you make a bad decision, oftentimes there's consequences. With Belichick, there weren't, but with everybody else, there probably would be.
Yeah, and just to finish out this topic, I mean, now we're going to have to hear for the next year when Belichick doesn't have a job. Every time a coach looks like they're in trouble, well, maybe we should hire Bill Belichick. The lazy take of it, everybody's going to espouse that. That's what's going to be said, the entire time. And then I heard this from on Bill Simmons' podcast, where he's like, "Well, Belichick will sit out a year, and then he'll have his pick of which coaching job he wants." It's like, okay, sure he will. Like the people who believe in Belichick and want to make excuses for this, they just continue to make them. So this topic is not going to go away.
There were like what 7 openings this year?
Yeah, 8, and 8 including New England. So he wasn't going to get
7
that,
for
7
for
that he had a chance
for
at.
Belichick. So
yeah,
you're telling me he's going to have his pick of jobs next year? There were 7 openings this year, and only one team interviewed him.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So I think this is ridiculous. I think he's probably done. Like nobody's going to want to say that. I think this might be it. This is, you don't get to, by the way, you don't get to choose whether you're done or not. The NFL teams do. and the NFL teams are saying no thanks. So
Yeah.
that's all I can tell you. Somebody's got to actually offer him a job in order for that to work, and I just don't know if Arthur Blank, like, he wanted to do it and he couldn't get his front office guys to go along with it. That kind of worries me going forward. But anyway, the guy who did get a job, Jim Harbaugh, who we've been I don't know why. I don't understand. I mean, I don't understand how Jim Harbaugh is controversial. I get why he's complicated, right? And I'm going to go into that, but I don't understand what the anti-Harbaugh argument is. But regardless, Jim Harbaugh got the Chargers job, and it looks like he's going to choose or have a big say in who the general manager is going to be on that team. And first off, I got to give the Chargers credit for this. Like, they usually don't, write the check and pay for the coach. They usually don't do that, and I think it helps that Harbaugh has worked for them before. He played for that team, as when he was finishing up as a player. So I think the fact that he knows the family definitely helped his cause. But to me, this is this is a home run. I don't understand how anybody could dislike this. I don't understand why anyone would think that he's not going to be able to turn this around. He's going to a team that is in a big market, Los Angeles, that has a quarterback that's, they're willing to spend money on players. We've seen that. And
Yeah.
Harbaugh's gonna get to decide who's doing what. So I don't understand why. Like, you're gonna have to prove to me that this doesn't work. That's the side I'm on. Like, and I've heard people like it immediately that people want to come out and downgrade it or give me why it's not going to work. Well, the cap situation, and they give me all this nonsense that has nothing to do with it. It's like, yeah, so he's gonna build up the team. It's like, oh, we got these high priced guys and we can't, whatever. It's like, okay, that's what the NFL draft's for. Like, that's what free agency's for. Like, that's why people trade players when they want to get, they're done with them. Like, there's a million ways to win. The Los Angeles Rams won the Super Bowl. They haven't had a first round pick in 7 years. So, this idea that, oh my God, you can't do this with this, all of those things will be worked out. It doesn't mean the Chargers are going to win the Super Bowl next year.
Right.
But my point is, they'll be fine. You hire the right coach in the NFL and you have a quarterback, you're fine. That's how the league works now. It's not really like you knock down those two things and wow, all of a sudden your team gets a lot better real
Look at
fast.
the Houston Texans. They turned things around immediately. They won the division. They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. I mean, that's what. And again, the Texans, they have a lot of holes. They still need to keep drafting players and build up their team. And you get the coach and the quarterback right, you can do a lot. I mean, I'm not saying you automatically win the Super Bowl, but you can be on the right path toward being a contending team.
Yeah, I think this is perfect. Harbaugh's won everywhere he's been. I don't need to go into any of that. But for anybody that thinks that that has, like, it's funny to me, like, this whole thing turned around. Michigan wins the national championship, and suddenly Paul Feinbaum's singing Harbaugh's praises. The guy's been ripping him apart for the entire time he's been at Michigan, but all of a sudden, no, he's a great coach now. It's funny. It's funny how that works. And the other thing is, Ryan McGee, I guess, from ESPN, wrote an article where Jim Harbaugh's legacy is complicated. And by the way, that's true. Like, he is complicated. Like, Belichick's got a lot of, he wears some people out. Some people don't want to deal with him. That's kind of the way it is. But the bottom line is, in sports, the guy knows how to win. His
Yeah.
players all love him. Nobody's like, no player is saying this guy can't coach, this guy can't get it done. So, yeah, Belichick's complicated. Yeah, Belichick's probably difficult. So is pretty much every great coach. We just went through Belichick. You don't think Belichick's kind of complicated and difficult sometimes? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
and again, like you were saying, we got to give the Chargers credit because I didn't think they were going to do this because they were going to have to pay for him, and like it's not the kind of move that they make. I mean, they basically, I'm trying to think of the different coaches they've had. They had Schottenheimer there for a while, and then they went 14-2. They lost to the Patriots, and then he got fired, and then they brought in Norv Turner. and he was there for several. And again, the Chargers just continued to underachieve. And then they hired like Mike McCoy, I think, because he was like the offensive coordinator for the Broncos when Peyton Manning was there, which I don't understand how much credibility that really gives you. I mean, you have Peyton Manning as your quarterback, you know. Then there might have been somebody else in there, and then there was Anthony Lynn who was there for a couple years. They underachieved in the playoffs, and they hired Brandon Staley, and that was, of course, a complete, absolute disaster. And Brandon Staley, like, I mean, he'd been an NFL coach for like, 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden he's the head coach of the Chargers. So I got to give the Chargers credit here. They finally decided to get serious about this stuff, and I think they're going to be rewarded, because I think one of the big problems with the Chargers is, like, for years and years we just watch them going, what are they doing? It always seems like the team's messing around, or they're making big mistakes at the wrong times, or just they have all this talent but they never seem to put it together. So yeah, I think Harbaugh is going to kind of fix that, and we'll see how far this goes. I mean, the AFC is really difficult, so I really think that people need to, before you go ripping a team that doesn't, who's got a lot of talent or a good coach and good quarterback, and they don't win the Super Bowl. Before you go doing that, just remember the AFC is really difficult, and so it's like, I mean, just think about it. If you're the any of these good teams, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Bills, maybe the Texans now, it's like say you win one playoff game, say you beat Josh Allen or you beat Joe Burrow. Well, then the next week you got to go play Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or whoever else. So it's just really going to be really tough for teams to kind of get through the gauntlet that is the AFC.
Yeah, and I heard Daniel Jeremiah make this point. It's like people who think, oh, well, Herbert's going to compete for the MVP now and he's going to be sensational. Actually, that's not the case. Generally, what Harbaugh does is make it easier for your quarterback. Like,
Yeah,
he's not going to go out and we're gonna throw for 10,000 yards and we're going to light all this stuff up. No, Harbaugh has his philosophy is the team's balanced. They're physical, they're tough, they don't make a lot of mistakes. Like, so I just think yeah, he's a great recipe for anybody trying to improve their team, and I think this will be a great fit. Michigan, they had to. I mean, it's difficult for college programs. If you lose your coach in January, it's difficult to find a way to replace him because all the jobs are basically taken and all the
yeah.
candidates are basically gone. So they're going to have the offensive coordinator Sharon Moore take over, and you know, generally, I just think hiring the longtime assistant is generally a bad idea. But we'll see how this goes. Michigan was kind of stuck for someone to hire, and I think they had to move quickly on this. And it looks like the defensive coordinator for Michigan is going to go with Harbaugh to the Chargers. So yeah, I feel. I mean, listen, Michigan got exactly what they wanted. Like, to me, I'm one of those. Like, I don't think you can complain about your team if you just won the title. So, yeah, they may,
Well, he
maybe
got him back to
Michigan won't.
relevance, and then they won he got him back to relevance. They won the national championship. Got a lot of attention on it, and now we'll see if they can get back to that level again. I'm kind of skeptical. I mean, they like you were saying, they kind of since they won their last one in '97, like they've gone through a bunch of different coaches, and they just weren't they were good, but they were never like really really good as what Harbaugh made them. So yeah, that's I would kind of, if you want to you know if you're a betting person, I would probably take Ohio State in next year's game between Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah, the combination of all the guys Michigan's going to lose to the NFL and the guys that are probably going to transfer is probably going to drastically, make have a drastic effect on their program next year.
Yeah.
Um, so there were two topics from the games that we both wanted to talk about. The Buffalo Bills and the indictment of Josh Allen, and then the constant sports talk about Brock Purdy. So I'll let you go, Clark. What you wanted to talk about the Buffalo Bills? Would you have
Oh
on that?
yeah. So obviously the Buffalo Bills, they lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs again. Um, Obviously incredibly disappointing for them and their fans. I know a lot of people are paying attention to the missed field goal, but really that would have just tied the game. And, the Chiefs probably would have gotten the ball and drove down the field and won the game anyway. So I think the bigger concern coming out of that game was some of the deep passes that Josh Allen threw. He needed his receivers to make some plays. They didn't do that. That caused some problems. And then, that last throw uh, on third down, or I don't know, maybe it wasn't on third down, but he had a guy open in the end zone, and I think it looked like his lineman kind of bumped into him as he was throwing, and that caused him to short arm the ball, so it didn't get there. And people are kind of criticizing. It's like, well, he was open in the end zone, but you also had Stephon Diggs wide open over the middle, and it's like, I'm not going to criticize a guy for trying to get the ball into the end zone. The guy was open. If he didn't get bumped into, I think he hits that, and they take the lead, and then, we'll see what happens. And if you guys remember correctly, in the 2021 game, the last 2 minutes of the game, both teams just went back and forth up and down the field. So, it could have been possible that if they score there, and then the Chiefs go down and score, and then the Bills get the ball back, and then they go down and score. So I'm not going to criticize the guy for that. Anyway, as far as just long-term, discussing Josh Allen's legacy as a player and kind of, well, is he ever going to be able to beat the Chiefs, or the Bills ever going to be able to get back to the conference championship game or back to a Super Bowl and potentially win it? Look, I don't know. Like I was just saying before, the AFC is kind of a gauntlet to try to get through. There's so many good teams. And, I just think that we need to kind of calm down about, saying, well, he can't beat Patrick Mahomes. Okay, well, what does that mean? Very few people can beat Patrick Mahomes. Basically, it's Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen does beat Patrick Mahomes in the regular season. So I don't understand what we're really proving when you're saying he can't beat Mahomes. So what, he stinks? No, he doesn't stink. He's really good. It's just Mahomes is, a cut above him. Or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's just Mahomes and the Chiefs are a cut above the Bills. They've also been there before. They've won championships, so they've got that going for them. So I just think people need to kind of calm down about that. Josh Allen, they've every year he's been there, they've made the playoffs. And every year except the first year, they go to the playoffs and they win one playoff game. Do you realize how hard that is? Like, do you realize how rare that is? That's just making the playoffs every year is difficult. The Dolphins made the playoffs 2 years in a row. That hasn't happened in 2 decades. Okay? So, he's really good. Does he turn the ball over a little too much? Yeah. But you know what? The way their team is, they need him to go out there and make plays. And a lot of times he does. And if you look at his numbers over the last 5 years, he's been absolutely unbelievable. Okay? And I will keep saying this till the end of time. Josh Allen beat the Chiefs in 2021. His defense and his coaches blew the game. I'm sorry, when you have to walk off the field with a lead with 13 seconds left, you're supposed to win. If you don't, that's a defensive failure. Okay? So, I really don't want to hear this. Oh, we just can't beat Mahomes in the playoffs. Yeah, fine, whatever. Okay? That doesn't prove he's not a really good quarterback. He is a really good quarterback. And I'm a fucking Dolphins fan, by the way. So I'm having to defend the quarterback of the Bills, who is clearly a gigantic obstacle that's going to prevent the Dolphins from ever getting far in the playoffs. But, yeah, I just kind of I liked what Greg Cosell said on Colin Cowherd's show yesterday. What do you guys want to do with Josh Allen? You want to just get rid of him and get another quarterback? Like, I don't understand. He's really good. And yeah, he's really good. I don't understand. Like, people are criticizing, well, he's not the winner. Yeah, fine. He's not as good as Patrick Mahomes. There's very few people that are. So I don't think that's a criticism. He's really, really good. Can we just, guys, at this pace, you think Josh Allen's not going to get in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
Maybe he won't win a Super Bowl, but so what? Lamar Jackson might not win a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow might not win a Super Bowl. Justin Herbert, even with Jim Harbaugh as his coach, might not win a Super Bowl. What does that prove?
Yeah, no. Josh Allen's fantastic. All the 30 other franchises would love to have Josh Allen as their quarterback. Okay, so the Buffalo Bills have some issues that they need to work out. And this is another game where don't give me statistics about this game. Okay, Josh Allen played really well. Like, I don't want to hear, well, he only threw for, yeah, they ran the ball really well. That was his job, to be efficient.
Did you see him run the ball though?
Right.
Did you
Yeah,
see
and
that throw he made in the corner of the end zone, like on the move? I mean, come on, guys, come on. I mean,
yep,
the
and
throw he made to Stephon Diggs, he should have caught that.
yep,
That throw was 65 yards in the air.
yep, yeah. If Buffalo catches the ball on a couple of those throws, the game's different. And by the way, Mahomes didn't have to do much in that game. Mahomes was
Yeah.
perfect, was efficient, did what they needed him to do. That's exactly what you want from your quarterback in a playoff game. It comes down to efficiency. It's not about, oh, how many yards did you throw for? Did you throw? Well, like, we get caught up in that nonsense, and I'm sorry. This is where again I could go on and on about statistics, but I'm sorry, statistics in football, I just don't think they mean that much. The sample size is always way too small, and you have to watch the games. Like, most of this can easily be, you can figure this out by watching the games. Speaking of watching the games, Brock Purdy managed to come back with lead a last minute drive or whatever to get the lead on Green Bay, and then Green Bay, turned the ball over on the last possession, so they were able to win the game. So, Clark, my contention, and I'm kind of echoing some other people here. So, the Brock Purdy conversation, it's the best topic in sports right now, because everybody's right. If you believe Brock Purdy's great, you can just, they're winning, he's got to be great. Period. And then even when they win, you can just sit there and go, yeah, but did you watch him play though? You're like, yeah, he's not awesome, blah blah blah. And so it just goes back and forth. The Brock Purdy people are trying to tell you he's elite. Everybody else is trying to tell you, no, he's not elite. It's the system, it's the guys around him, it's, whatever it is. And obviously in that game, you could see that the rain was affecting the way Brock Purdy was throwing, because he's just missing wide open people,
Mm-hmm.
because of that's how that offense works. So the thing is, Clark, what people are, the point that people are missing, right? And so we could debate Brock Purdy, blah 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 blah. My take on Brock Purdy is that, he's a good, solid quarterback. Okay, is he the reason that they're winning? No, but he's not. He's also not the reason that they're losing. So, you know, people are missing this. Brock Purdy doesn't have to be great. He doesn't have to be elite. The 49ers have
Right.
already showed we can get to and come very close to winning the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, we could debate whether he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo, whatever. We could debate where Brock Purdy ranks in terms of quarterbacks in the NFL, whether he's 8th or 12th or 16th or 28th. It doesn't matter, okay? He doesn't need to be great. He just needs to be good enough for that team. Can you win the Super Bowl with him as your quarterback, with him on that team? That's what this comes down to. Like, he can win nothing's going to change. If he wins the Super Bowl, the Brock Purdy people are going to be all over us telling us how great he is, and we're all going to be going, yeah, not really. This is just a perfect situation for him. And that's all that matters. He fits this team and does exactly what they need him to do. And the difference between Brock Purdy having a great game and kind of a game like he had against the Green Bay Packers is like 3 or 4 throws. That's what it comes
Yeah.
down to. Can you just hit the guys that are wide open?
Yep.
Right? The reason that it doesn't work for the Dolphins is because Tua is so limited, you need better players around him, and the Dolphins roster is not as good as San Francisco's is.
Yeah.
So you saw the difference it made. Deebo Samuel goes out of the game. It's raining. Boy, it was really difficult. Well, they still managed to pull it out. And I'm not sitting here telling you Brock Purdy's Joe Montana. I'm
No.
telling you he doesn't have to be. And that's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I think if you just put Tua on the 49ers, I think he'd basically be doing exactly what Brock Purdy's doing. That's not an insult to Brock Purdy. Okay?
Yeah.
That's just the way the sport works.
Well, and
So,
I do think he threw the ball a lot in that game, and I think you kind of saw the 49ers offense didn't play maybe as crisp as it usually is. And so I think Shanahan, it's kind of like, dude, don't have him throw that much. I don't think that should be in the game plan. You need to run the ball and then throw off of that, because there's just too. Purdy's good. I think he's proven that he's good. I mean, they beat the shit out of the Cowboys. They beat the shit out of the Eagles. Now, granted, looking back on that, I'm kind of wondering how impressive that is, because the Eagles were in the midst of completely falling apart, and the Cowboys clearly have trouble against teams that run the Shanahan system. So I'm wondering about that. I mean, they played the Ravens and they got smoked. I mean, they didn't look, and I think they had everybody against the Ravens. when they played him in the regular season. So, um, yeah, it's just funny. I mean, I think it's kind of like what you were saying. It's like no one's watching the NBA and going, Tyrese Halliburton should win the MVP, or whoever, whatever other names you brought up. It's like no one's saying that, and it's the same thing with the people like, well, Tua was in the MVP conversation. So, like, you really think he's the MVP? Like, really? I just think it seems to me that it's pretty clear. Like, okay, people criticize Josh Allen, like for instance, and they say, oh, he turns the ball over too much. It's like, well, dude, he has to go out there and be Superman most of the time to try to get them over the hump. And a lot of times he does it, right? But Purdy, it feels like whenever they ask him to really do that, like you got to carry the load, it's not, it's too much for him. He doesn't have the ability to do that, you know. But when he's playing within the system and like you're running the ball well, and they've got the talented guys around him, and Shanahan's able to scheme those guys open. Purdy can hit them, and the offense can look pretty good. So, yeah, that really, like you said, that's honestly, that's the most insightful thing about this whole damn debate is, can he actually win the Super Bowl? And we don't know. We'll have to see. Can they even get to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy? Well, we'll see.
Yeah, and that's what this all comes down to. And that's where the argument to me, that's where this whole thing goes off the rails, is when Purdy's going to be in the top 5 for MVP this year. And it's just, that's the problem with it. When you're talking about Purdy and Tua and Dak Prescott for MVP, that's where this whole thing goes off the rails. The MVP, you're basically saying this guy's the best player in the NFL, right? That's basically what it is. Now, we could debate valuable all day long, but you've got to be the best player on your own team, if you're going to win the MVP. And so that's the problem with it. The lens that we look at these things through is just basically, did they win or not? And so if they win, the quarterback has to be great. And so it just blows my mind. It's like, and that's why I shoot down anybody's statistical argument when you want to bring statistics to football. I just say, yeah, Tua led the league in passing yards. So what?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, Lamar Jackson doesn't only had like 3,000 passing yards, I think. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, do you watch him play? You see how many rushing yards you get? You see how much teams have to that's one of the main things. How much do teams have to scheme for Brock Purdy? Are they scheming for him, or are they scheming for, Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey? Like, when teams play the Ravens, I mean, it's like, oh shit, how the hell are we going to deal with Lamar Jackson? Or if you're playing the Chiefs, how do we deal with Mahomes or the Bills? Or, there's probably other quarterbacks I'm not thinking of, but yeah. And with Purdy, I don't think they're scheming for that. They're scheming, how do we beat this system?
Yeah, the point of coaching is to put your players in the best position to succeed, right? And try to win the games, whatever way that you have to do it to win. Like, that's what the point of it is. So yeah, I just don't I don't know why we need to classify everybody, but it's just something that we do, and it's minute to minute. We are assessing these guys, what their future is, what their legacy is, what they, and it's really funny to me. So, just be prepared. The Brock Purdy conversation is just going to go haywire if the 49ers win. It'll just be a never-ending stream of 2 weeks of, why is Brock Purdy elite? How good is he really? What's the, and again, I hate to break it to the people. I agree with the people who say he's not elite, but I hate to break it to you. It don't matter. It makes no difference. All he's got to do is do what's necessary for this team to win. That's it. So anyway, all right. So we'll move on from that. So let's preview the games. So we'll do Chiefs Ravens first. Yeah, I think this is a really highly contested game. I think this is going to be relatively close because I just think both defenses are pretty good. And I think that I don't think Kansas City has seen anything like Baltimore's defense up to this point in the season. So I think the game remains tight, and I think it comes down to a few, some plays in the second half, and I just think the Ravens are going to make them. Now, I've heard this argument the whole week. You can't bet against Mahomes. Like, how can you bet against Mahomes? And I'm just like, well, I don't know. I remember the Super Bowl against Tampa. I remember the playoff game against Cincinnati where they lost at home. Like, the AFC Championship against the Patriots. Like, yeah, I remember Mahomes losing. He has lost some games, just to break it to everybody. It's not this isn't the way we remember Michael Jordan, where we think he never lost any games. So I do think it's possible for them to lose. And I just think the Ravens are the better team. I think they're the side to take. Could Mahomes flip the game if it comes down to, one or two plays in the fourth quarter? Maybe, but I expect the Ravens to, by the time we get to the second half, they're going to have a pretty good handle on this game. And when it comes to physicality, I just think the Ravens are just superior.
Yeah. It's, look, and I've been saying this multiple times. The Chiefs aren't going to win the Super Bowl every single year. Okay? That's not how this works. You don't win the Super Bowl every single year. Even Brady couldn't do that. You don't even make the Super Bowl every single year. Okay? So I just find it hilarious, well, you can't bet against Mahomes. That's not a take. Okay? That's not okay, I guess it is a take, but it's a really crappy take. It's way too simplistic. Okay? Because if you're just saying you can't bet against Mahomes, then that just ignores any context having anything to do with it. It's like, okay, guys, you think the Chiefs offense has totally figured things out after playing two banged up defenses 2 weeks in a row? And, all season long, the receivers couldn't get open. They couldn't catch the damn ball. And Travis Kelce looked like he was done, or not done, but he looked like he was he's really on the decline. And then all of a sudden, after 2 weeks playing banged up defenses, I'm supposed to believe their offense has fixed everything. And I'll level with you. If the Chiefs go out and their offense looks good against the Ravens, then fine. I'll pick the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. Okay? But I still need to see more. Okay? And people are like, well, how can you say that? I'm like, I know they've won 2 Super Bowls with Mahomes. I get it. They've been to the Super Bowl a bunch of times. They've been to the AFC Championship a bunch of times. Mahomes is really good. I get it. But, I'm sorry. I need to see more. Now, the concern you have is that really Lamar Jackson's played one really good playoff game last week. I would think that he's kind of crossed over a little bit. He's got more talent around him this time. And I think his offensive coordinator showed last week he knows how to adjust, because they were getting pressured last week, and it's in the first half they didn't really know how to adjust to it. And then the second half they kind of took over. And I just think, people like Nick Wright are just saying, oh, well, Lamar Jackson's going to have a bunch of trouble dealing with the pressure. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I mean, you don't think they're going to run the ball? I mean, the Bills ran the ball up and down the field on the Chiefs last week. You don't think the Ravens can do the same thing or better?
Yeah, and the Ravens played the 49ers. The 49ers were putting pressure on them. It didn't matter. So right. I don't. I just don't. I'm sorry. I don't think either one of these defenses is really like capable of just, all right, that's it. We're just going to completely shut down everything they do. And you can throw out all the past stuff with the Ravens. This is a completely different Ravens team. Okay, new offense, new offensive coordinator, better weapons. Like, the whole thing is completely different. So I don't buy any of those past numbers for Lamar have anything to do with what happens in this game. And you've seen, like, the Chiefs can be run on. Teams have run the ball on them really well. So I just think I don't think the Chiefs are going to have enough, and I think the Ravens have 2-3 guys that they can they can control Travis Kelce with. They've got good enough corners to keep the Chiefs. Let's face it, not great receivers in check. So yeah, I'm not saying it's not going to be competitive, but I mean, if you're asking me, like, from what I've seen from this season, I don't see how you can't. I don't see how you can't pick the Ravens. You just, if you're watching the games, I just
they've been the best team all year long. And again, look, here's the other thing. It's just like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Chiefs win the game. So what, I'm supposed to apologize for picking the Ravens or something? Like, I don't understand this. Like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah. No, listen, it's possible in a close game. Anything's possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think either team's going to pull away and that could, who knows, maybe Mahomes will come through in the fourth quarter and something will happen. Who knows? But I think, and I think Bill Simmons made a good point here that Travis Kelce is, like, good for parts of games now. Like, he can't be great for 3.5 hours. Like, he can give you an hour and a half. He can get. So that's the other thing. It's just I just don't buy what I saw from the Chiefs. I don't buy that that's going to happen long term. I don't think Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to turn into Jerry Rice. I just don't. I'm sorry. I don't buy it.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, the second game, 49ers Lions. This one I see a little bit differently. I just think the 49ers have just an overall better team, and I think Detroit's defense is a serious liability in this game. They've let Baker Mayfield and who did they play in the first playoff game?
Stafford.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield and Stafford have thrown for 350 yards each. So I think the Detroit's defense is going to have, if they struggle with those teams, they're going to have a real problem with this 49ers offense. I do think what I will say in Detroit's favor, though, I do think like if their offensive line can block the 49ers front, they're going to score. So I think Detroit can maybe able to keep themselves in this game, but at the end of the day, I just think there's very little chance that the Lions defense is going to be able to hold down the 49ers offense.
Well, that's totally true. I will say this though. I mean, it's just funny with the 49ers because most of these playoff games they go into with the inferior quarterback to the other team. And I mean, it's hilarious, the dichotomy here. Jared Goff is a former number one pick, and Brock Purdy was literally the last pick in the draft. So, I mean, put it this way. I think you can definitely make a good argument for Detroit winning the game. Okay. You can make a great argument for San Francisco winning the game too. I think it'll be fun. I'm rooting like crazy for Detroit. I don't think I'm going to pick them, but I really would like to see Detroit in the Super Bowl. I think that'd be really cool. But I mean, still, again, it's like, I guess it's going to be a really good day, so Brock Purdy's not going to have to worry about rain or anything like that. So that won't be an issue. And Deebo Samuel is going to play. He's not on the injury report anymore. So, yeah, you got to figure that San Francisco should win the game. I mean, if they don't, I don't know. That feels like a little bit of a failure. I don't know. Can Detroit find some way to really play better defense over the course of the game? I don't know. It's going to be really tough against San Francisco's offense.
Yeah, I think and this is the crazy part, Clark, and this is the best part to me about Detroit. They're on the way up. This isn't
Right.
a Detroit team where it's fully formed. Like if they can get 3 or 4 more starters out of the draft on defense, they're all set because they've got everything else. Their offensive line is awesome. Their receivers are really good. Their running backs are fantastic. Right? They've got the 3 or 4 guys on defense.
Yeah.
So that are pretty good. They got Aiden Hutchinson's good. Looks like he's going to be an awesome pass rusher. The safety they draft from Alabama is really good. Like they've got the building blocks of it. They just need to gear up and improve their defense a little bit. They're scary. Like this Detroit team, like I said, if they're going to block, like if San Francisco plays defense like they did against Green Bay, Detroit's going to score a lot of points. So yeah, if you put a gun to my head though, I mean, I would, the 49ers are favored by 7.5. I would take Detroit plus a 7.5. But I just think the 49ers have too much talent, that they're going to find a way to win this game at home.
If Goff was more of a mobile quarterback, then it might be even more like, okay. But yeah, like you said, Detroit, they have to block for him. If they block for him, he's going to throw the ball really well, and he's going to be he's a really good pocket quarterback. But yeah, if he gets under pressure a little bit, then that doesn't bode well.
Yeah, I'm not that concerned about Detroit's offense because the weather's going to be good. It's not going to be crazy cold in San Francisco, so I think they're going to do some damage on the 49ers defense. And yeah, from what I saw last week, I'm a little concerned about the 49ers defense. Like it's not what it was a few years ago, and so that's the reason I'll give Detroit a chance. But I'm thinking I think it's 49ers Ravens in the Super Bowl, and I think that's they're going to be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think that I'm rooting for Detroit. I mean, and if we could get, I mean, look, any of these matchups I think is great, but I don't. If we could get if the Ravens don't win, then give me the Chiefs and the Lions again, because the Lions obviously beat the Chiefs the first game of the year, so.
Yeah. So Clark, before we get out of here, how about we're going to give our Dolphins take. So this is a take for next season that we're kind of building as we go, and we're just going to kind of add to it. But I think we need to get this out there now because it's not even February yet. So Clark and I believe that the Dolphins are going to come crashing back down to earth next season, and probably win 6 or 7 games. Uh, now I'm going to give my reasons, Clark, and then you can add on to it or give some other
Okay.
reasons that you think. So number one, injuries. Look, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Connor Williams, right? That's the center and the 2 pass rushers. They're not going to be back at the start of the season, right? Connor Williams and Bradley Chubb tore their ACL. Jalen Phillips tore his Achilles. They're not going to be back right away. So I have a hard time believing. So now we got to find somebody to play center,
Yep.
right? So and they've got to try to re-sign Christian Wilkins. That's going to be a nightmare, right? They're probably going to give Tua a contract, and that'll be a problem for the future. But that doesn't necessarily affect next season. I think other teams are my second reason. I think other teams are catching up. I think the first year with Mike McDaniel, it took teams till about week 12, week 13 to kind of figure out what the Dolphins were doing. This year, I think it took till about week 5 or 6. Like, I'm not sure how many more rabbits you can continue to pull out of hats to continue to make the Dolphins offense, to survive against these teams. And honestly, it only works against bad teams at this point. So the
Yeah.
good teams have already figured it out. And my third reason, the team's been built wrong the entire time. They built this team from the outside in. They're getting all these offensive weapons instead of building an offensive line like you need. Like, look how the Lions are built. Like, that's the right way to do it. That's how you survive when you have a quarterback who's not that mobile, who doesn't have that strong an arm. That's how you make him look really good, not having Tyreek Hill on your team. And bringing me to Tyreek Hill, and that's why my belief is, and I don't know how people feel about this, but I really believe the Dolphins would be better off with working on getting a better offensive line and not trading for Tyreek Hill. I really believe they would be much better off as a running ball control team, and then we can be explosive with Jalen Waddle when the time arises. They'd be much better off built that way than they would giving up draft picks for Tyreek Hill, because you saw the last 4 games of the season. What are we getting out of Tyreek Hill at that point? It's not, and by the way, not Tyreek Hill's fault. It's just, we're not using our team as efficiently as we could. So anything to add on to that? And if you have any other reasons why we think the Dolphins are not going to be good next year?
Well, those are all obviously really good. I know the Dolphins have a bunch of free agents this offseason, so that's going to be tough to re-sign them, especially considering they're top heavy. They got some really big contracts. How much longer is Tyreek Hill going to be an elite receiver? I understand he just had 2 years of getting 1,700 receiving yards, but you see he gets nicked up throughout the course of a season. He's just getting older. That's probably going to happen more often. How much longer is he going to be on the team?
Well,
that's sort of looking to the future.
Just to interrupt you there, Clark, Tyreek Hill just had the best season of his career. Yeah. They can't beat good teams. Like, he's not going to get better next year.
Right. Exactly. So there's obviously that to consider. And then it's like, guys, the not being able to beat good teams thing, that is a serious problem. And I need people to understand this, okay? The schedule hasn't come out yet, but you already know what teams you're going to be playing. You just don't know how it's going to be laid out, okay? The Dolphins have to play, obviously, the rest of their division. So you get the Patriots twice. They're not very good. Maybe they'll be a little bit better. Maybe Gerard Mayo will be a good coach. I don't know. But that's potentially two games that maybe those are winnable games. Okay. The Jets twice, but Aaron Rodgers is going to be back. Now, I understand the Jets have some problems on their offensive line. Maybe they're able to address those a little bit, but they're clearly going to be better than they were this year.
Yep.
Okay. Even though Aaron Rodgers is obviously toward the end of his career. Okay. They can't beat the Bills. Okay. That's become totally clear now. And I understand the Bills have some issues, whatever. Fine. The Dolphins have no way to compete with Josh Allen. Okay. So that's a problem just in their own division. Then they got to play the AFC South. Now, a few years ago, you might have said, who gives a shit about playing the AFC South? Well, things have changed. The Texans just won the division and made the playoffs. You got to imagine that. I think they've got a pretty good front office. I think they'll be able to keep building their team. They had some talent. They just had some injuries later on in the season. Okay. So they're pretty good. All right. The Colts, Shane Steichen knows how to coach. He'll have Anthony Richardson back, and the Dolphins have enough trouble dealing with Josh Allen. You don't think they're going to have trouble dealing with Anthony Richardson? And Shane Steichen knows how to coach to put them in a good position to win the game. The Jaguars, I understand they flamed out, but they still have Trevor Lawrence. They have Doug Peterson as their coach. They're still a good team. Okay. And then who's the other team in the AFC South?
You said
The
Jacksonville,
Titans.
Houston, yeah, Tennessee.
Okay, the Titans are kind of bad, but so what? They're bad. The Dolphins couldn't beat them this year. And Tua's played the Titans twice. He looked terrible against them both times. Now, granted, Mike Vrabel's not there, so maybe that changes the equation a little bit. We'll see. But then they have to play the NFC West. The 49ers, okay, that's not a pushover. The Rams, they're clearly the Rams are just going to keep building their team back up. Stafford is still really good. Puka Nacua is really good. Cooper Kupp, the tight end's really good. They're a really good team. Seattle, we'll see. I don't know, that they're kind of in flux right now. And then Arizona, I mean, Kyler Murray is really good. Okay, he can really make plays. That is not going to be some easy game. And I think the Arizona coach knows what the hell he's doing. Okay, and then there's some other games on there that I can't really think of right now, but that's a lot of the games on the schedule. Okay, and if the Dolphins can't beat good teams, then you're telling me what, they're just going to win 11 games given that schedule? I mean, did you see 11 wins on any of those teams that I was talking about? I mean, I don't.
Yeah, and not only that, they got to play San Francisco and Seattle on the road. So not you're not getting him at home when the weather's nice. So, and who knows when they play those games either. Who know. And the other thing is, the schedule might not work out with the travel as well as it did this year. They really didn't have very many cold weather games, and
Right.
so they got to play the last game against Buffalo in Miami. Like, they usually don't get that 2 years in a row. So you might have to go to New England or the New York Jets or Buffalo when it's freezing cold. And I don't think the weather is as big a deal as people are making it out to be, because I just don't think the Dolphins are good enough. But
Right.
yeah, this is a serious issue. And so if the Dolphins are going to give the quarterback a contract and then go 7-10, like, it just brings up.
And remember, the other thing is, and this is somewhat of a you know maybe it's not the best argument, but I mean, every year in the NFL there's like 6 or 7 different playoff teams. Okay, the Dolphins went from making the playoffs every now and then to making the playoffs 2 years in a row. You think they're going to make the playoffs 3 years in a row? I mean, and I think people are, I don't want to go too much off on a tangent here, but I think people are mistaking this. They're like, oh, so what? Tua can't beat good teams. He's just got to get a little bit better. No. When they play good teams, their offense sucks. Okay, like, it absolutely sucks. They struggle to get first downs. Okay, they score like 14 points. They can barely score. Okay, so it's not just they're losing the games; it's the way that they're playing in the games.
Not only that, in the second half of games, they can't score at all. I think the last 5 games, they scored 15 points in the second half total. So they got shut out against Buffalo, right? They got shut out against Baltimore. They got shut out against Kansas City in the playoff game. So yeah, this is not a team that's going to go out and beat and, like, to your point about the AFC, like, Jim Harbaugh just went to the Chargers. You don't think they're going to be good now? Like, Joe Burrow's coming back for Cincinnati. Like, they would have made the playoffs had he been able to play the whole season.
Right.
So there's a bunch of stuff in the AFC that, these teams are not going to stay where they are. They're going to continue to improve. And so the Dolphins got 11 wins this year when you had a handful of teams down in the AFC that
and I
we
think
don't
people
expect
get the
to
wrong
continue
idea.
that.
They're just like, oh, well, you made the playoffs 2 years in a row. That means you're just going to keep doing that, or that means you're on the way up. Sometimes it does. It doesn't always mean that. It depends on who your quarterback is, who your coach is, how your team's built. And the Dolphins, they got some, and that's the thing that people don't. That's the thing people need to understand. It's like, when you have salary cap issues, or you're having a rough year in terms of you lost some free agents or whatever the case is, you need your quarterback to be really, really, really good to make up for that. And some quarterbacks can do that. Tua is clearly not one of those guys.
Yeah, so it's going to be don't feel I'd love to come on here and be positive and believe in the team, but we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe the Dolphins can supplement with some draft picks and pick up some free agents to fill some of their holes, but it's a problem, like, because of the way that the team is built, right? The Dolphins are built like a team who should be competing for the Super Bowl, but they don't have that kind of team. So they're paying 7 or 8 guys a lot of money. You want to be built like Detroit, where they're paying the quarterback. They're paying Jared Goff like $30 million, which is not bad for a good starting quarterback, and they're really not paying anybody else. Or like Green Bay, where they're literally paying nobody.
Yeah.
That's where you want to be. And so the Dolphins is like, we have all these high priced guys, but we went. What did the general manager? He went all in on this team, and it's like, for what did we go all in for? Like, we have no shot against these good teams. And I know everybody wants to say, well, the weather was really bad in Kansas City. Watch the last month of the season for the Dolphins. The last 4 or 5 games they played, they didn't play well in any of them.
Good weather or not.
Right. They couldn't score points. It didn't matter what was going on. So the idea that the cold weather is the biggest influence here is just a bunch of nonsense. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, hopefully we'll get some great games tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have a good Super Bowl. And then Clark, we got to start jumping into the NBA because trade deadline's coming up. There's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. So anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah. So one last topic I wanted to cover. So I know this is 2 weeks ago, but I had happened to be scrolling through some stuff on my phone, and I came across a story. So when the Chiefs played the Dolphins, obviously it was extremely cold, and in terms of below zero cold. And I mean, I think it was like -6, -7, but with the wind, it felt like it was -29 or something like that. So anyway, I was reading an article about this. So at the end of that game, the temperature was -9 degrees and felt like -28. But apparently, the Kansas City Fire Department rendered aid to 69 people with close to 50% for hypothermia symptoms. 15 of the patients seen were transported to the Kansas City Fire Department, 7 for hypothermia symptoms, 3 for frostbite symptoms, and 5 for various other reasons. So I guess basically I'm saying this all to raise the point. What the hell are we doing? It's 2024 and we're playing games in below freezing, not below freezing, below zero temperatures. And to be honest, like, as this article kind of points out, it's one thing to have the players going out there and doing that because they can go over to the sideline. The benches are warm. They got heaters over there and stuff. And then at halftime they can go into the locker room and help themselves warm up. They got plenty of fluids so they can stay hydrated. Because one of the things people don't realize, or they may think it's kind of strange or whatever, but when it's really cold weather, you can get dehydrated really quickly. So the players can do that fine, but the fans, the people who work at the stadium, have to essentially, risk hypothermia and frostbite just to, allow fans to be in the game, to be at the stadium. And so I did find it kind of funny. One of in this article, this is on, I think it was on CNN. This guy who's a director of atmospheric sciences at the University of Georgia said extreme temperatures are the deadliest weather in the U.S. each year, and that's hot or cold. So I think people get the idea that they think, well, a tornado or a hurricane or a earthquake or a mudslide or something is the worst, weather threat that you could possibly have. Well, no, it's extreme temperatures. People don't seem to think of it that way, but that actually is the truth. So I just wonder, we've made all these changes. Like, we've changed the helmet, we've changed the rules. We've made it harder to have kickoff returns because that's one of the most dangerous plays. So again, what the hell are we doing playing in these freezing temperatures? And I understand that, like, the stadiums are built a certain way and whatever. And I understand that in the past teams did this, but there's a lot of things that we did in the past that we don't do anymore. People used to think it was okay to smoke cigarettes. Doctors would even recommend cigarettes. People thought it was okay to smoke or drink while you were pregnant. People didn't wear seatbelts in cars. We didn't have airbags in cars. We've come up with some different traffic laws, like traffic laws, and also just you guys have seen those barriers they'll put in front of stores, those like poles. Well, why did they do that? Well, because cars would crash through the front of stores, so they figured, well, we'll put these up and they'll crash into those instead of crashing into the stores, because we know better now, because we've got experience. So I just, putting the players in, like I said, putting the players in danger is one thing, but I mean, you really want to risk hypothermia or frostbite just to watch an NFL game? And look, I love the NFL, but I mean, come on, guys, it's a game. I just, I just think, what the hell are we doing here? I mean, if we're going to talk about player safety and fan safety, more importantly, then I think we need to kind of discuss this issue. I mean, it's kind of funny to me. They postponed the Bills game, the Bills against the Steelers, because of the snow, because people couldn't drive to the game, as if that's more dangerous than sitting out there in minus 29-degree wind chill weather and being cold. And I even saw they had some quotes from fans. They're like, well, it wasn't the cold weather that got people sick. It was the fact that they didn't prepare. Well, no, it was the cold weather that made them sick. And you can criticize people for not preparing. I mean, fine, but I mean, should you really be out there in minus 29 degrees? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think the advice for anybody, if it's minus 29, is, well, stay inside until it gets warmer.
Well, yeah, and the idea that, oh, this is football and these are the best games when it's like this, and I'm like, no, it's not. The product is much better when it's indoors. Guys can, everybody can play loosely. They don't have to worry about, I think the idea that these cold weather games are awesome is just complete nonsense that's been fed to us by, old YouTube videos and watching old NFL games. The games are usually not good. And by example, that Chiefs Dolphins game was a pretty bad football game.
Yeah.
If my team wasn't in it, I would have had no interest in watching it. I barely had interest watching it when my team is in it. So, I agree with you. I think it's absolutely asinine. I will never understand sports fans that go through that much crap to go watch your team. Like, why? I just don't. It's never going to make sense to me. I'm glad they put Super Bowls in domes or warm weather. I think that's the game we want to watch. And why would you make the product worse? Willingly.
Yeah. I mean, I just, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's just kind of funny, because I do think that there's starting to be kind of a thing like, should we be playing this game right now? Should we postpone this? Because I feel like in the past, that wasn't even a thought. It's like, well, the game is scheduled for this day. We got to play, and it's like, well, no, you don't. And I think some people are starting to wake up to that, but I just thought that was an interesting thing to come out of these playoffs, where we had, one game get postponed because of snow and another one, and just hearing people on TV like, oh, well, you have to deal with cold weather. It's like, no. There's cold weather, and then there's what was going on in Kansas City. I mean, that is life-threatening temperatures.
Yeah,
So,
and
anyway.
by the way, and I agree with you, not about the players, but the fans. That's what
The
I'm worried
fans
about.
and the people working at the stadium, the people in
Right.
concessions and all those other things that all the other people that have to work there to put those games on and allow the fans to go there. Just putting your life on the line for a game, essentially. I know we all love this stuff, but it is a game.
Well, Clark, it goes back to what we've been talking about, man. Football is heroin. It got a huge amount of viewers. So, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to. That's the scary part. As me being a fan, is that the games don't even have to be good, because the TV networks make all the money. No one cares. So it's just like, it's
Right.
just really disturbing to me that this is where we are. Maybe I'm part of the problem. Maybe because I'm supporting it, I'm watching it. Maybe I'm part of the problem. But all we can do, Clark, on this podcast is pass on our wisdom. So maybe that's all
Well,
we
and
can
look,
say.
maybe in the article I was reading, maybe a solution is you just limit the number of fans that can come to some of these games. Because you can keep fewer. It's easier to keep fewer fans safe, and then you don't have to bring as many people to the stadium. Because I just, the players, hey, it's your job. You can decide to go out there or not. You're making millions of dollars. But the regular people, that's what I'm more concerned about.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been caught dead. And then Clark, and then I don't want to go on forever about this, but the Buffalo Bills fans, Clark, they had to go to the stadium and shovel out the snow themselves. Like, what are we doing now? Like, that to me is just asinine. And it's, oh, they were perfectly happy to do it. I'm like, okay, that means there's something wrong with you. Like, what do you mean you're perfectly happy to do it? Like, they don't have anyone they can hire to shovel out the snow?
Wait a minute. I got to pay a bunch of money for the ticket just to go to the stadium. I got to, drive there and deal with traffic and whatever else. And then you people are telling me the day before, hey, can you come to the stadium and sweep stuff out? Are you going to pay me? No. Are you going to give me a discounted ticket?
Well, no,
No.
they did pay some of the
Oh,
people
they
and then
did?
gave
Okay.
them food and stuff, but it's just like, what other? I'm sorry, Clark. In San Francisco, that would never work. I mean, no offense to Buffalo, like I'm sure they're lovely people, but most cities in America are not doing that. Like, I hate to break it to you. Like in Miami, there is no shot of anyone doing anything like that. So I think it's, that's fine. They want to do that, but I think that is just an absolute ripoff and a joke. Like hire
Yeah.
a service to come fix your stadium. Don't expect the fans to do it. But anyway, all right, Clark. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Hopefully we get some good games and, Ravens 49ers. I think that's probably,
Go Lions. Go
yeah, listen,
Lions.
I'm
I'm
rooting
rooting like
for,
crazy for the Lions. That'll be awesome.
absolutely. I think it'd be great for the Lions. Both our parents are from Michigan, so
Yeah, that's true.
we have a little rooting interest there. But thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, let us know how you feel. Check us out. All right, everybody, have a lovely weekend. Enjoy the games.